Hi, I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Charlene. Welcome to Empowered, Life Lessons of Everyday Women.
Each episode, you are going to meet an amazing woman who has struggled through challenges both in her home life and her work life and has been very successful in their careers.
Before we get started, we thought it would be fun to share with you how we got here.
So one day after book club, Charlene and I were talking about all the challenges both of us have had, both at home and at work, and how many times that we wish there was somebody that we could have talked to get some insight. And we realized how many amazing women we have met in the last few years that have incredible stories that would provide great insight to other people who are having challenges. And I thought, we could write a book.
And I said, you're crazy. We're not writing a book. I said, but then I thought, and I said, oh, we should just do a podcast.
Because why not? We know nothing about podcasts.
Yeah.
But a podcast is a great way for us to share information to young women who are just starting out in their careers or maybe re-entering their careers, and we're going through some of the same challenges that we had. So here we are.
Yep, we're here. So join us. Meet Rebecca, working smarter, not harder. Rebecca has over 30 years of experience in business, finishing her career as a vice president of customer support. She has worked in small startups, big companies, and she has been an independent consultant. She brings a wealth of knowledge that everyone can learn from.
So join us, grab a cup of coffee, get in a comfy chair, and let's talk to Rebecca. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning. How are you guys doing?
We're great. I am so happy that you could join us today. So we want to get into the good stuff because that's what this podcast is all about, is giving insight to young women. So if you had to go back and talk to your 20-year-old self and give them a piece of wisdom or insight that you now have, what would that be?
Well, I'm thinking about when I was growing up, my dad had a big influence on me to be a hard worker, and I was. That was very ingrained in me. He was a construction worker. He left every day with his lunchbox and his coffee thermos, and I thought, I want to be a go-getter like that. So in my first kind of a real career kind of job, I was with a startup company, Cable Data, and it was exciting, and I worked hard. I was the first one in the office, the last one to leave, and it was kind of a high-tech environment where that was rewarded. And after 8 years, I thought, this is it. It's probably time for my big promotion. I ended up in HR. So I learned I was working hard, but not on the right things. So I will say, make sure you know what the company prioritizes and that you're doing work that they value. I think that was a big lesson for me.
Oh, interesting.
I was clueless.
So it's not just having a work ethic, it's making sure that you're working on the right things rather than just working hard. Yeah, that's interesting because I know a lot of people will go through and they will work really, really hard and kind of like a hamster, they're spinning their wheels. So let me take a step back because you were doing that for 8 years, getting in first thing in the morning. Did you have any children at that time?
Yes, my son was about 5 years old. And so it's hard to fit that into the day. I remember a couple of times I actually brought him in the office with me and he would play next to my desk because I didn't have child care coverage or something happened. And luckily my bosses were open to that.
Wow, that's amazing because that's not normally, especially then.
I can totally relate, Rebecca. I did that too. There were days when he was just a little too sick for daycare and in came the crib and the baby, and my bosses were also open to it. So that's a big thing.
That's huge.
So I think kind of the next thing I learned on that was I also needed to learn to brag a little bit. But not in a bad way, but be able to articulate what I am accomplishing that's valuable and get feedback from my boss that it is valuable. And so there needs to be that conversation.
Absolutely. And it's not bragging, right? It's self-promotion because people don't know everything that you are doing unless you tell them about it.
Yeah. And I think there's been a movement towards that it's easier for women today than it was, back when I was first coming up, I think.
I
Yeah.
think so. I think part of that is there's more women in the workforce in various levels within business where there weren't necessarily when we were starting out. So
Yeah. And then they can tell you well, that's not very important to this company. They've moved in a different direction. So I thought it was impressive, but they didn't. So it's a feedback loop. But then once I'm getting an understanding of what I'm accomplishing that they value, exactly, I need to be able to articulate it. I need to promote it a little bit and make sure that the right people in the company are aware of it.
right.
I think that's great. I never even thought about that. That's not something that's ever crossed my mind about self-promotion, but it's really important. And I think maybe generationally for us, at the time that we were all working, that maybe that was different. I think nowadays, validating yourself is a little bit more acceptable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know if I think it's part of it is becoming confident that you're not bragging, that you're actually providing insight to management on what you've been working on and what you've been doing. And, I've had that conversation with my daughter, actually. It's like, you have to be able to tell them exactly what you've been doing to make sure that they're aware of it, because you want that visibility from them and within upper management. So that's awesome.
That's great.
So, you had your child, you're working all of these hours. How did you juggle it, Rebecca?
Well, I think, I don't know. I was younger and had more energy.
I think that's very true.
A lot less sleep at that time.
Yeah.
But I think I learned to be pretty efficient and organized. I really was able to focus on kind of a work when I was at work and home when I was at home. I remarried, and when I met my current husband, Tom, and remarried, he was extremely supportive and helpful. And what was interesting is through our especially early years, I had a more challenging career that was demanding in tech. He had one in agriculture that was actually fairly predictable, more of a 9 to 5 kind of a situation. And he wasn't traveling a lot at that time. So he would pick up our son. He would take care of things. So,
that's awesome.
and I say our because he became our son. He really took him on as his own. And that doesn't always happen. Yeah.
You're
yes.
very fortunate.
Yeah.
I was blessed. Yeah.
So I know when we were looking at your resume, you did an awful lot of travel. Was your son young when you were doing a lot of that travel, or did that come later in life?
Most of it came later. So the year I started consulting in the mid-90s was actually the year that my son went off to college. So it worked out very well. I mean, I'd have occasional business trips a few times a year prior to that, which we could get coverage, and my husband would step in because he was always in town usually. But that year that I started the consulting job, I did it because we knew our son was launching and I would be able to travel because I think the high school years with kids are as hard as toddler years.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Some
but college
cases more hard,
Yeah.
more difficult.
they need more supervision, that's for sure. They can get into higher stakes trouble.
Yeah, different type of supervision.
So that's when I started traveling a lot, like all week, like leave Monday, get home Friday night, every week.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
So when you were doing a consulting, were you consulting with another company, or did you go out on your own?
So the first year that I consulted, I was on my own. I had a friend who had a consulting firm, and he would hire other independent contractors. So he kind of showed me the way. He was a great mentor. So I was working for AT&T Wireless at the time, and the cellular phone industry was really starting to boom.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of acquisitions happening between the Baby Bell companies. So there was so much opportunity. I knew the business systems, the software, and could come into these companies that were acquiring properties. A lot of them were cable companies previously, becoming cellular phone companies. They had been dealers, and they needed updated software. So they would bring subject matter experts like me in to come and assess their systems and determine what they needed. And so I did that for 1 year on my own and learned how to run my own business, basically, which is a lot of work. And you're constantly promoting yourself. So you have to be selling the next contract while you're fulfilling the current contract.
In there.
Yeah, yeah. So, and each project would be maybe 3 to 6 months on average. So you're always looking at that next job. So I joined, after that year, I joined really the largest consulting firm in the wireless industry at the time. And so they did all that part. They would line up the next contract.
Focus on
the consulting.
Yeah.
Focus on the work.
If you were going to give somebody advice today on kind of like, because that sounds like the traveling and all that, like what would you say to somebody who's maybe younger and doing all that traveling? Like what kind of, how you managed like even your personal life? You said your son was in college, but you still had your personal life and that still had to be somewhat interfering in terms of like just personal life. So how did you manage that? And I mean, in the sense, what did you do so that you kept things good at home? So
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think that people who do that on an ongoing basis, I did it for 6 years. It's exhausting. And it's mainly you lose your interpersonal daily relationships. I didn't have close girlfriend relationships. I would only be home on the weekends. That was very hard.
Yeah.
And it was a male-dominated world. So I was traveling with men. I didn't really, if I occasionally I would end up, making a buddy at work or at a client site and then have a friendship form that was long lasting. I have a few today still. But for the most part, you're a loner. I mean, I'm on the plane, I'm studying, I'm reading, I'm researching, I'm getting off, I'm meeting clients. I remember doing a red-eye to Canada one time. I was up all night on the flight, get there, and you walk into the client office and you're meeting everybody and they want recommendations immediately. So it's exhausting.
You have to hit the ground running no matter what. There's no
Absolutely.
Well, I guess that work ethic came in handy, the one that you said you got from your dad long ago, because you know you just did what you had to do. I mean, as a person who owned my own business, I just did what I had to do, and I used to say to Rebecca, I told Rebecca, I closed my shop down at 6 o'clock when the kids came home from work because I was working out of my house, and at 8 o'clock when they went to bed, I was back and working again. So you just did what you had to do. Yeah,
that's right. You do what you have to do. I think one of the things I learned, though, is you form alliances quickly. So when I was changing clients frequently, especially, I had to go in and say, okay, these people all are individuals with personalities. Right. They might think their job's at risk. Their company's going through an acquisition. Yep. They've got 2 CFOs, they've got 2 people doing this and 2 people got a duplication. Somebody's going to go. They see me as the enemy coming in and talking with them. So you've got to make alliances, assure people, listen to them well, and just form those alliances and people you can trust and that you can work with. And you have to be able to do that very quickly.
So that sounds like that's one of the big challenges you had, especially with the consulting and everything else. I'm just trying to make sure that I clearly understand. Building those alliances, listening to people, gave them the confidence to share with you what you needed to get, as well as you being able to disseminate the information that they needed.
And work with management.
And work with management.
Yeah.
Yes. And validate them. I had to validate. I thought one thing that was helpful, I think, was when I went to them, say, wow, this looks like a big job that you're doing and it's very important. And so this company cares about this and I want to make sure and document that. So that's going to open them up to share with me that I'm there to listen to them. And I actually truly believe that as a consultant, the company would listen to me more. I went back and consulted for my previous company, AT&T Wireless. Made double the money, and they actually listened to what I said. So it was nice to consult.
Wow. Different positions, same person. Well, that's really interesting.
It sounds like your authentic self, and I think being authentic is always important. But just even the way you just said that to us, I believed you.
Exactly.
And so it takes a special person to have that kind of personality that can be that kind of go-between that you were and make everybody feel comfortable. So that's I think that's a really good thing to bring to light to our audience and listeners.
Absolutely. So I know one of the listeners that we do have was asking about going in and trying to influence people that might be older than you or have more experience, perceived more experience than you do. How did you ever have that situation? And if so, how did you manage influencing people that were older than you to get things done?
Yeah, great question. I experienced that quite a bit, both in the consulting as well as when I moved up in my career pretty quickly. So I was frequently younger than a team I was managing. What I learned early on is really the definition of a team is it's not me telling people what to do. I never viewed it that way. I viewed it as making sure they understand the vision for our company and our department and what we're trying to accomplish. And then look at each individual in that team, find their strengths and leverage it. And that only works if the other people on the team value that person as a contributor. Team dynamics is an interdependency. And that's what I would always try to build. Some companies you go in and they say, well, here's the org chart. This person does this one does this, boom, boom. And I never found that to work real well. The people you have define who does what. You got to get the job done.
Yeah, it's the culture. I mean, that's a difference between hierarchy in a business versus the culture. It's totally different. It's funny. One of the things that I always found is, sometimes it's the people that are not up in upper management that really know the things that are going on in a business. Yeah. And a lot of times, it's whether it's the assistant, whether it's the, person on the assembly line, they actually have a better feel for some of the things that are going on and some of the issues than upper management does.
Power within a company is not defined by the org chart. That is exactly right. I observed that, especially going in as a consultant. It was so clear that this person might be the boss of these people, but really this person over here is respected by the team. And they are influencing and making things happen or not happen. That is a negative, and that can be a positive. And knowing that, I think for young people to go back to what I would maybe encourage people that are young coming in an organization is watch and listen and learn. What are we doing here, and what's the real power structure?
Right.
It's not.
I love that. I really love that.
Yeah, that's
great. Me, that is one of a huge insight to share.
I would call those aha moments.
Exactly. Did you ever have anybody who was a big influence on you? I know you talked about your dad. But anybody else that maybe was a big influence on you in your career?
When I was at Lumens Light and Living in Sacramento, this is when I was tired of consulting, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I want a home life again.
You wanted to see your husband. Wow.
Yeah, I'm willing to give up working at home office because I had worked, very independently home office, but I wanted to get back into my community. And one of my clients at the time was a local lighting business, and we had helped them build an online store because I was working for an e-commerce company. And actually, right when I was having all those thoughts, he invited me to lunch, and he said, we're going to grow our business, and I need somebody to come in here and help me run and build a whole call center and customer service. And you could do that. And so I took that opportunity. So we built that from less than $1 million a year to tens of millions business. We became one of the top 3 lighting design companies on the internet because there's a little business in every town, but only so many made that change to be a major presence online. So we did that. I'm getting there, and we got acquired by there was 2 of us at the top. There was 3 of us. 2 of us merged two businesses. Y Design Group and Lumens Light and Living became the largest. And I had to take our call center and take our competitor and put those businesses, merge them into one team. And that was a huge challenge. So we were going into this with animosity and a competitive
Absolutely.
spirit, right? We're better than them, and they're over here like we're better than them.
Yeah, exactly.
So our CEO at the time, Jim Steeb, who was a wonderful, wonderful mentor, always the kindest man and very human and yet strong business, said to me, go help your team, both teams go into this assuming good intentions.
Oh, love it.
So when you meet people in a business environment, sometimes your heckles are all up. You're like, bad things, they probably want to hurt me. If you go into the conversation assuming good intentions, now don't be naive. They might prove otherwise, and then you shift. But go into the relationship assuming good intentions. And I always have to carry
with
that.
every relationship.
I think
it is unbelievable.
Yeah, I would say that's my life philosophy. Is you always want to be hopeful and positive, and then let's see what happens,
Right.
and not have this kind of like negativity is a business killer. And yeah,
If you go in with assuming that everybody has got bad intentions, it's gonna be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
yes, yeah,
So
Right.
why would you put yourself at a disadvantage right away?
yeah. That's great.
Love.
That's great.
And sometimes we do that. We just don't realize it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We've heard bad things, or some reason we come into it with a negative influence.
Preconceived notions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm just overwhelmed by all the insight that you're providing.
Fabulous.
But
Yes.
yeah.
So, one more question.
And then we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's been two.
Okay. 2 questions. Then we're going to wrap it up.
He was a mentor to you. Was it a formal mentorship? I know there's a lot of people that have talked to me about how do you find a mentor? How do you go about getting a mentor? Did you ever experience that? I mean, you mentioned he was a mentor, but was it formalized? Was it informal?
At the time, I wasn't consciously thinking, oh, I'm going to get a mentor. It wasn't a conversation. But what I did do pretty early on in my career was, after watching an organization and figuring out where the real power lies, and sometimes it was at vice president level, director level, whatever it was. It didn't even have to be in my department, but it was somebody that I felt I could relate to. I would work late, and if they were still in there, I'd stop in their office and say, I've got a question. Could you help me with something? And then that would establish a mentorship. We didn't call it that at the time, I don't think.
Right.
But it clearly was.
It was an informal process, but it was asking questions that's awesome. Appreciate
Advice. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And direction. And people are happy to give it. And I tried to do the same. I definitely, as I grew and became a higher level, I always wanted to have that open door for people. But they have to seek it out too.
They do, absolutely. Yeah. You can't push it on somebody. They have to want it, and they have to know what they want to get out of it. So them asking questions to someone else is a good way to do that.
Yeah, well said.
So that's great. Is there any last minute? I mean, you've given us so much advice. I love it. Advice, lessons learned, whatever you want to call it. Is there any last minute life lesson that you want to share with our viewers?
I think I would tell people, stay curious, always be learning. There's just so much out there now, especially. You can learn about everything online if you figure out your sources and learn from other people. I learned this from one of my employees. He was my director of customer service at Lumens. And one day we were interviewing, and it was a very bad interview, him and I, and the guy left, and he said, I don't think I could learn a thing from that person. And my goal in life is to always be able to learn something from each person I meet.
Oh, wow. I love that.
That's great. That's great.
And
I think that's great advice.
They might not be good at everything, but there's something that person has, a skill that you could learn. So I think that's a neat kind of a tip to go into conversations and approach everyone that way with a curiosity.
So, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today. I mean, we really appreciate it, and we love your insight. There's too many to list in this.
Really.
I mean, I would try to pick out one, but there's so many life lessons I learned today. So, and to our viewers, our listeners, if you found this helpful or you have questions you would like to ask us, please let us know. Send us your email at empoweredlifelessons@gmail.com, or we have a Facebook page, so you can contact us there, and we do have a website. But yeah, thank you, listeners, for joining us. We hope you found this helpful. And Rebecca,
Thank you.
can't say enough good things. So thank you.
Have a great day, you guys.
All right. Thank
Bye-bye. If you found this empowering in episode 2, you will enjoy meeting Jenny L., an educator with a unique life story.